Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in American English Live Series 17. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. My name is Kate, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Elena, who will be helping to moderate and answer your questions and responding to your comments during today's session. Let's begin today with these wonderful audience comments from our most recent webinar, 4 Reading Tasks to Promote Critical Thinking with Jeremy Beal. So Maria Eugenia in Bolivia wrote, "Our viewing group loves the reading tasks presented. They are of great value to enhance learners' critical reading skills and can be used with different ages and levels." Thank you so much, Maria. And Kira in Belarus wrote, "It was a great session. Getting students to think critically is really challenging and they need to be taught to do it. I'm going to use a lot of the ideas from today's webinar. Thanks." Wonderful. Thank you, Kira. And we have Lorraine in China who wrote, "It is a very beneficial webinar. I always have problems motivating my students to express and discuss in class. The ideas introduced are so useful and I'm going to apply them tomorrow." Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We love to see our teacher participants actively engaged in professional development, so please continue to share your thoughts about our webinars by offering feedback through the end of session quiz form or by emailing your ideas to americanenglishwebinars@fhi360.org. We may feature one of your comments during the next session. Throughout Series 17, we will be exploring the themes of critical thinking and inclusive practices in ELT. We hope you are able to use the practical ideas we share. So here's what to expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts using the comments feature or chat box. And when our session comes to a close, you'll have an opportunity to receive a digital badge for your participation. At the end of the webinar, we'll share a link in the comments. Click on that link and complete a short quiz about today's session. You must answer 2 out of 3 multiple choice questions correctly. And once you've successfully passed the quiz, you can expect to get your badge via email within about a week. And before we begin, we wanted to make sure you know about one of our upcoming massive open online courses, Developing and Teaching Academic Writing Courses. In this free MOOC, participants will learn how to develop courses that meet their students' writing needs, explore strategies for teaching academic writing in a student-centered classroom, and discover different tools for designing course materials. The course begins on June 20th, and registration is now open. Use the link being shared by the moderator to learn more and enroll today. And now for today's webinar, using visible thinking routines in the language classroom. Visible thinking practice has gained popularity in recent years as a valuable classroom tool for maximizing student engagement, promoting critical thinking, and increasing collaboration. Developed by Project Zero at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education, these highly flexible conceptual protocols often require little teacher preparation while yielding rich learning opportunities across age groups. Typically presented as simple sets of questions or prompts, these routines provide a context for students to effectively process new concepts, make connections, and extend their learning. They provide a productive framework for students to record their questions, opinions, and conclusions in a systematic way. This session will introduce several visible thinking routines that can enrich communicative dynamics, stimulate productive engagement, and foster insightful expression, a valuable addition to any language teacher's instructional toolbox. And now we're pleased to introduce our presenter, Stephanie Bolaños. Stephanie is originally from the tropical paradise of Costa Rica. She immigrated to the United States in her childhood and settled with her family in Northern California. Growing up in San Francisco and engaging with its rich diversity, she acquired an early interest in language and culture, which ultimately led to her obtaining an MA in TESOL at San Francisco State University. Over the years, she has traveled between California and Costa Rica, teaching ESL literacy, English for academic purposes, and English for specific purposes. Currently, she is an ESL instructor at Castro Valley Adult and Career Education. Excuse me. She spends her free time cheering for the San Francisco 49ers, an American football team, and thoroughly spoiling a French bulldog named Max. Welcome, Stephanie. It's wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you for the warm welcome, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'd like to wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever the case may be. And I'm really excited to be here with you, since one of my favorite pleasures in life is gathering around a table with other teachers to talk about learning and to share experiences and exchange ideas. So it's great to be here as we gather around this virtual table of sorts to talk about one of my preferred topics, visible thinking routines. Let me start by asking you to imagine a scenario. You're at home on a weekend, say a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon, thinking ahead to your Monday morning class, scouring the internet or your favorite activity books, looking for that one golden activity to introduce to your students that will provide an engaging and productive and exciting start to the week. I'm guessing that many of us here can relate to this experience, and so you know that it can be very hit or miss. Sometimes you do find that one jewel of an activity that you're looking for, and sometimes you don't. So it was a very happy day for me when I discovered visible thinking, a framework that offers a whole toolbox of activities that have brought a wonderful, fresh energy to my classroom. These routines are flexible, motivating, and productive tools that can easily be incorporated into your instruction to become a valuable resource in your own classes. So for starters, since all of us here are involved in the teaching and the learning process, I'd like to share a proverb with you that says, "Better than 1,000 years of diligent study is one day with a great teacher." As you consider your own experiences, what thoughts come to mind about teaching and learning as you read this quote? Please write your responses in the chat box.
What a wonderful quote. We want to hear from you, everybody. What thoughts come to mind when you hear this proverb? Better than 1,000 years of diligent study is one day with a great teacher. Joelma says a teacher plays a key role. Absolutely. Wonderful. What other thoughts come to mind? I definitely think of some of my favorite teachers and how they inspired me. Adnan says guidance is the key to success. Mai says being a great teacher is a must. Krishna says inspiration. Wonderful. Understand and placing something in the brain. Maybe the teacher can really help with that. Guidance is the key to success from Kainat. It's important to have great rapport with the teacher from Aisha. A teacher brings his experience in one lecture from Shatha. Wonderful. And let's see one more from Saw. Just one teacher who helps you and guides you effectively is more important than learning alone without any guidance. Wonderful. What great ideas, everybody. Thank you for sharing.
Good work, everyone. You've just participated in part to a routine called Think, Puzzle, Explore, which we'll revisit a little bit later. So now let's take a look at our agenda for today. First, we'll examine some background information on visible thinking routines and its origins. Secondly, we'll identify the key features of visible thinking routines. And finally, we'll be exploring a selection of visible thinking routines, The bulk of our time today will be spent on this last item. So let's take a look at some background information. Visible thinking routines have been developed over a period of several years by researchers at Project Zero, a research center at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education since 1967. Project Zero is dedicated to researching various topics within the field of education, including visible thinking, yielding best practices for the classroom. And thirdly, this research led to the publication of 2 books, Making Thinking Visible in 2011 and The Power of Making Thinking Visible in 2020. So next, let's take a look at some key features of visible thinking routines. These activities consist of simple sets of questions or steps that can be implemented with very little teacher prep time, which is a huge plus. Visible thinking routines scaffold and deepen students' thinking so that they engage critically and creatively with the content. And thirdly, visible thinking helps reveal students' thinking to the teacher and raises students' awareness of their own thinking moves, allowing them to reflect on what works best for them. Next, we'll take a look at a sampling of visible thinking routines. These are amongst my favorites, the ones I've most enjoyed and that have yielded the best results with my students. They are beginning, middle, end, the 4 C's, think, puzzle, explore, the 3 Y's, and word, phrase, sentence. So let's take a look here at some visible thinking routine basics. These are a variety of routines that can be used at the beginning, middle, or end of a lesson. For instance, the think, puzzle, explore routine that we saw with the proverb in our introduction is excellent for preparing students as you introduce a new theme or topic. Secondly, my experience has been that these work best when introduced gradually. With my adult education students who met 4 days a week, I would first introduce one routine and give students an opportunity to practice it 2 or 3 times over a period of a couple of weeks before introducing the next routine and then continuing in the same way. Thirdly, they work best if they're used regularly for greater familiarity and productivity. With my adult education students, I would use these routines in class maybe twice a week. And fourthly, I find these routines valuable for reinforcing language functions, such as stating an opinion, agreeing, disagreeing, asking clarifying questions. This use of language functions benefited students' productive and receptive skills as they express their ideas during discussions and listen to their peers. Next, these routines benefit students by promoting an atmosphere of collaboration where students' thoughts are acknowledged and valued. And finally, this is an adaptable model. It can be used for various classroom contexts, whether you work with children or adolescents or adults. The first routine we're exploring is beginning, middle, end, described by Project Zero as a routine for harnessing the power of storytelling to observe connections, patterns, and meaning. You use this tool by first introducing a thought-provoking image. It can be a photograph, like the one that you see here, or a painting or a sculpture. Really, any visual art can be used. In one lesson, I selected this image of a man silhouetted in the forest and looking toward a light in the distance. I thought it made a good selection because it presented different possibilities for speculation. After presenting the image, I posed these 3 questions to students. If this image is the beginning of a story, what might happen next? Then, if the image is the middle of a story, what happened before? What might be about to happen? And thirdly, if this image is the end of the story, what might be the conclusion? So here you see one example of a student's responses. She wrote, "It is the middle of the story. The man was tired of his ugly life and left it behind. In this picture, he finds a strange new world full of beautiful, happy robots. But will he stay with the robots forever or return to reality? He must choose." So you can see how the photo inspired this student's inspiration. So let's give it a try here. I'm going to present an image that I'd like you to reflect on, and then I'll ask you to respond to one of 3 questions that I'll pose to you. So please take a moment to look at this image. You might consider who the man is, where he is, or what he's thinking about. Allow your imagination to roam. Then answer one of the 3 questions to the right. Please write B if your answer is about the beginning, M if it's about the middle, or E if it's about the end. Please share your ideas in the chat, and just a couple of sentences will do.
All right, everybody, we want to hear from you. Take a look at this image and let us know your answers to one of these questions. Maybe your question is in the beginning, what might happen next? Or in the middle, or at the end, and you can see the questions there, what might be about to happen, and what might the story be. So make sure to let us know what you think might happen in this story. Maham says he is investigating or researching something. Wonderful. Adnan in the middle says, I wish I could have glasses to use instead of getting tired with this panel. Very nice. What else? Let's see, the end. The students, okay, let's see here. Leticia says this looks like a spy story. Wonderful. He gathered a lot of clues and now is putting them together. Maybe that's towards the end. In the middle from Quintero, he says he is investigating a crime and taking notes. Wonderful. Let's see here. Let's see. So many responses coming in. It's hard to read all of them sometimes. The story is in the middle. A man makes observation in the laboratory from Catherine. The person is in this image is beginning something. He's undergoing an experiment from B. And Zoo says he found a secret. And let's see, it's the person is searching for something new. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for those great creative responses. So on the next slide, you will see here some guidelines for trying this routine in your classroom. So first, you introduce a thought-provoking image. It can be a physical photograph displayed in class, or an image projected on a screen, or an image posted on an online classroom platform. Next, you ask the students the 3 questions about beginning, middle, and end of the story. You can have students do a free writing in response to the image, which they then share in small groups. And as a possible follow-up activity, you can ask students to produce a short story writing assignment. And so here is one more important teaching tip. To maximize the benefits of this task, it's important to ask students to identify any key details in the image to support their ideas. Asking the question, "What makes you say that?" is a good prompt for getting students to dig a little deeper in their thinking processes. For example, the student who created the Happy Robot story said that the brightness and the position of the light didn't quite seem like natural light, and that inspired her science fiction angle. And so the next routine we're looking at is called the 4 C's. This tool is described by Project Zero as a routine for structuring a text-based discussion by examining connections, challenges, concepts, and change. One example of how I've used this routine was with the topic of friendship. In class, we read a short article about the qualities of a true friend and spent some time exploring the complexities of friendships. The article identified several key qualities of a true friend. We see that list on the left: trustworthy, dependable, funny, kind, confident. Students had various opinions about how to rank certain qualities over others and what they most valued in a friend. The first question is, what connections do you draw between the reading and your own life? Then, what ideas do you want to challenge? Thirdly, what key concepts do you think are worth holding on to? And finally, what changes in thinking might you consider for yourself or others? So for this example, let's go to our moderator, Kate. Kate, let's just focus on that first question. As you look at the list of qualities of a friend, what connections do you draw to your own life?
Yeah, I think about some of my closest friends and definitely think how they're trustworthy. They will keep secrets. They're dependable. They're always there for me if I need them. They're funny. They make me laugh. They're kind and are generous with their time. And the confident one, I don't connect with quite as much in terms of my best friends. But some of my friends are very confident, and it always inspires me to be more confident too. So those are some of my thoughts with the connections that I have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. So then let's take a look here at some sample student responses. For connection, one student said, "I have the best friend in the world. She's my sister, and she is all these things." For challenge, she responded, "But I don't understand why funny is on the list." For concept, she said, "Kindness really is most important. When a person is kind, they probably have many other good qualities." And for change, she said, "I never thought about confidence in friendship, but it's true. If you are confident, you can help others feel confident too. And that's a true friend." So you can see here the variety of responses as students focused on these 4 different aspects of the topic. So let's give it a try. I'm going to present you with a topic in which you will apply the 4 C's. And that topic is characteristics of a good teacher. I'm sure that many of you have pondered this topic, whether you're a new teacher or a seasoned one, thinking about the topics that we can bring to the table to help our students succeed is certainly important to consider. On the left, you see a list of qualities. They are enthusiastic, humorous, challenges students, encouraging, patient, and admits what they don't know. So I'd like you to think about this list of characteristics with the 4 C's in mind. The questions are on the right. Now, normally in class, I would give students time to address all 4 questions, but because our time is limited, I'll ask you just to focus on the first question and write your response in the chat box. What connections do you make to your own life as a teacher?
Let's hear from you, everybody. What connections can you make to your own life as a teacher with these really great characteristics? Enthusiastic, creative, humorous, challenges students, encouraging and patient, and admits what they don't know. A lot of people are saying that they connect to the idea of being creative. Wonderful. Benish says, I'm creative and I always encourage my students to challenge their abilities. Wonderful. A teacher should have a great sense of understanding and patience from Lasma. I agree to all of these great qualities from Adnan. Sidhi says that they connect well to the encouraging one. Challenging students and being creative is something that Nadia connects to. All right, Nayab says being humorous should be limited. The teacher should be all of these from Ibrahim. And Aish Khan says encouraging and enthusiastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing.
Great responses, everybody. So next, let's take a look at some guidelines for implementing the 4 C's. This particular routine is useful following the reading of a text when you want students to reach for deeper significance and to discuss their observations. So first, give students the instructional material, whether it's a poem, a short story, an article, or an essay. You then present the 4 questions, or if time is limited, you can just focus on 2 or 3 of them. It's not required to focus on all 4. You do have some flexibility. You then ask students to mark passages from the text that correspond to each of the questions. And next, students share their observations in groups, comment and ask questions. And as a possible follow-up task, you can ask students to write a journal entry summarizing what they learned from the discussion. So let's take a look at a couple of added tips for implementing the 4 C's. What we've done here today is a very abbreviated version of this routine, but it really works best following the reading of a text or even a series of related text on a topic. So first, with longer texts, it's best to give students time outside of class to read. Secondly, giving students time to identify key passages to support their responses is another important consideration. And thirdly, students share in groups, taking 1 C question at a time, giving each member of the group a chance to participate before moving on to the next C. So let's move on to our next visible thinking routine, Think, Puzzle, Explore. Think, Puzzle, Explore is described by Project Zero as a routine that sets the stage for deeper inquiry. One topic in which I've used Think, Puzzle, Explore was defining success. In class, we read biographic information about the lives of some of the technology giants, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. I introduced the unit by presenting the quotes about how they each define success. One quote was this one by Bill Gates. He said, "Don't compare yourself with anyone in this world. If you do so, you are insulting yourself." This routine helped us anchor the discussion with these 3 questions. First, what thoughts come to mind as you read the quote? What is your immediate reaction? Secondly, what questions does it raise, or what puzzles you about the quote? And thirdly, what ideas come to mind for further exploration? Here we see some sample student responses. For think, one student wrote, "Bill Gates understands that no 2 people are the same, and this is a beautiful thing." For puzzle, the same student asked, "But is it bad to compare yourself to a person you admire, like my mentor?" For explore, this student responded, "So, how can you admire someone and want to be like them, but still be you?" These responses led to thoughtful discussion as students explored what it really means to be successful and how that definition can shift dramatically depending on a person's view of the world. So, let's give it a try. I have here a quote that you will use as a basis for answering this question. The quote comes from Dr. James Comer, currently the Maurice Falk Professor of Child Psychiatry at Yale Child Study Center. He says, "No significant learning can take place without significant relationship." For our purposes today, I thought we would all focus on that second item. What questions does the quote raise, or what puzzles you about the quote? Please take a moment to write your ideas in the chat.
Yeah, this is a great quote. No significant learning can take place without significant relationship. I'm sure a lot of you have some thoughts or ideas for exploration, but for today, we're just focusing on that question piece. Let's see, what are your thoughts, everyone? What does it mean? What is the definition of significant relationship? That's a great question. Let's see. How can we know who is the significant one to start the relationship? Interesting, from Krishna. Anna asks, does it have to be a relationship with a human being or the subject you study? These are amazing questions, everyone. Wonderful. Mama Do says, is relationship always essential for learning? Great. Everyone has different personalities, so there should not be any comparison. That's from our previous quote. Very nice. Let's see. What about the teaching in classes where we don't have relationships with individual students? From Samita? Maybe that's like a large classroom or maybe a virtual classroom. Wonderful. All right, one more. Let's see. How would life be without significant relationship? From Anu. These are so thoughtful. These are such thoughtful questions, everyone. Thank you so much for contributing.
Great responses, everybody. Thank you. And so on our next slide, we're going to see here some suggested classroom guidelines for Think, Puzzle, and Explore. This routine is good for introducing a new topic or theme by preparing students for a close read. So first, you give students time to view the instructional material, whether it's a quote, a text, or a video. Secondly, you pose the 3 questions about thoughts, puzzles, and exploration. Thirdly, you give students time to think and write their responses. And then students share their responses, ask questions, comments in groups. And finally, as a possible follow-up activity, you might ask students to summarize their ideas on poster paper to display in the room. So for teachers who are leading online classes, one digital option to consider is Padlet or another similar tool. Padlet is a virtual bulletin board in which teachers and students can post comments on the same page in response to a common prompt or question. I have found that it works well as an online alternative for some of these routines. So now let's take a moment to ponder a reflection question. As you consider this routine, how might you adapt it for your own classroom? Think about your student population and your curriculum. How might you adapt this routine? Think, puzzle, explore with these considerations in mind.
Yeah, let us know, everybody. How might you adapt this routine for your own classroom? Please let us know. I thought this was a really great activity. I know many of you did as well. Let's see. Adnan says, being in a crowded classroom, I would try it in groups. Great idea. It's always great to use grouping strategies for those large classrooms or for any classroom. Wonderful. What else would you do to adapt this routine for your own classroom? Let's see. I might use a quote of a little bit lower level, or might provide sentence starters for my students depending on their language level. Let's see. I would use it in conversation classes from Anna to provoke discussion. Wonderful. That's a great idea. You could use simpler questions with pair work from Sakange. Very nice. A lot of people are saying that they would try it in pairs or groups, or that they would change the quote or the questions a little bit based on the level of the students. That's great. All right. Yeah, a lot of people who are saying working in groups. I think that's a great idea, getting students into smaller groups. They might feel more comfortable sharing their ideas that way. Wonderful, everybody. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, everyone, for those great ideas. And so let's take a look at the next item on our agenda, which is the 3 whys. The 3 whys is described by developers at Project Zero as a routine that encourages students to consider personal, local, and global significance. For this particular example, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. And rather than explaining the routine and leading with some student examples first, I'd like to just ask you to reflect on the task first. I'll explain my reason for changing the order afterward. So let's take a look at a student poem titled, "Education is Like a Fire." This is from a collection of wonderful student poetry from around the world that appears on the American English website. I'm going to read it aloud, and I'll ask you to follow along. Education is like a fire that grows beyond with flames that reach higher, and a fire that never burns out, but just grows. It is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom. The more we want to, the more we'll come to know. And it is not all about reading. It is about how you see the world. You are the mother of all professions, the pillar of life, the savior of mankind, the ladder that takes us to imaginary heights. Without you, we are nothing, only mere mortals, and shaping our personality is the motto. I want to thank you for your greatness, Because of you, I have a future which is bright and clear. So now I'm going to ask you to think about the poem and reflect on 3 questions. Now, you don't have to answer all the questions in the chat, but I'd like you to think about how you might respond as first I and then Kate share our own thoughts. So the first question is, why might the message of this poem matter to me personally? So for myself, I can say that I hear clearly the passion in the voice of this writer. She feels deeply about learning and growing and reaching her full potential. This reminds me of the importance for us as teachers to bring this same passion to our own classrooms each and every day. We really owe it to our students to reflect this same love for learning. The next question in the 3 whys is, why might the message of this poem matter to people around me, such as family, friends, my community, or my city? For this question, I'm going to ask Kate to share her thoughts. Kate, what do you think about the significance of this poem to the people around you?
This is such a beautiful poem, and I think that the way it would affect the people around me, like in my community, my friends, my family, my city, is to inspire people or to remind people of how important and how significant education is and how much of a change it can make in people's lives, not only in individuals, but then in the lives of everyone around us in our community, and how we need to value education as a society. That's what I think.
Great response. Thank you, Kate. So let's take a look now at the 3rd question. Why might the message of this poem matter to the world? I'll ask you to, now for the audience, to respond in the chat box. Why might the message of this poem matter to the world? What do you think is its global significance? Please take a moment to think about it and write your responses in the chat box.
Wonderful. And I see some wonderful responses already coming in. So why is this message important for the world? Wonderful. Let's see. So many great responses coming in. The message of the poem is universal equality, important for all around us, from Khalil. What a beautiful comment there. Thank you. I see, let's see, reflecting on education and its importance is essential, from Alfaro. Wonderful. Let's see, education is the key to success, from Ambreen. Very nice. I think that education is a powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. I believe that was from Nelson Mandela. A couple of people are writing that one. That's a very great one. Education is necessary in life, from Nancy. This poem will allow people to reflect and remind us on the power of education, from Joelma. Wonderful. And let's see, there are so many good ones coming in. Education plays a vital role in the life of all around us. Wonderful. From Aish. Thank you so much, everybody.
Love those answers. Thanks, everyone. So let's take a look next at some guidelines for implementing the 3 whys. I think you can see the wonderful potential here for concluding a lesson by encouraging students to expand their perspectives on a topic. So first, you start by allowing students time to review the instructional material, whether it's an image, text, quote, or video. Secondly, you pose questions one at a time, allowing students time to respond after each question before continuing with the next question. This is really important. You want students to focus on each question individually without allowing their responses to seep and blend with one another. We want students to think about these three elements distinctly. Otherwise, the boundaries can get fuzzy and the discussion becomes unfocused. Thirdly, students can then share in small groups. And finally, as a possible follow-up, you might ask students to write a paragraph summarizing their thoughts on the topic. In addition, you may consider reversing the order of the questions, potentially starting with the global question first, then transitioning to the local question, and culminating with the personal question. It's really up to you, depending on your objectives maybe for that particular group of students. So now let's move on to our final sample of visible thinking routines. This is called word, phrase, sentence. Word, phrase, sentence is described by developers at Project Zero as a routine for capturing the essence of a text. It encourages students to reach for the heart of the meaning in a reading. An example of how I've used word, phrase, sentence was with an excerpt from the book, I Am Malala, the autobiography of Malala Yousafzai. She is the world's youngest winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, awarded to her at only age 17 for her work as an education activist for women. Her autobiography, I Am Malala, described memories of her childhood in Pakistan, where she grew up in a loving family and in a richly stimulating home where education was highly valued. After reading a passage from I Am Malala, students were asked to go back to the text and select a word, phrase, and sentence that they felt best expressed the essence of the writer's message. Here you can see the prompts for this routine. First, select a word that captured your attention or struck you as powerful. Then, select a phrase that moved, engaged, or provoked you. And finally, select a sentence that you found particularly meaningful. Here you can see some sample responses. One student identified hypnotized as a word from the text in which Malala describes a deep connection to the meaningful discussions that she listened to at family gatherings and the flowing exchange of ideas, a feeling so deep that she felt almost hypnotized. For phrase, this student selected talk of the world beyond our valley. This came from the passage in which Malala describes how those rich conversations opened up a world of possibilities to her, far beyond the town where they lived. For sentence, the student selected a line that read, I'd love to hear the men debate politics. Malala describes how her exposure to the debates between her father and his friends inspired an early interest in political activism. So, I'd like to pause here for a moment to reflect on this question. What do you think might be the benefits of using word, phrase, sentence with your students? Take a moment to think about your classroom, your student population, and your curriculum, and write your response in the chat.
Yeah, let us know, everybody, what might be the benefits of using this technique, this routine in your classroom, word, phrase, sentence. What do you think, everyone? And we see a lot of people who are connecting with those words, phrases, and sentences that you shared with us in the previous slide. Let's see. Mansour says it would be a great way for scaffolding. Wonderful, great idea.
Yeah.
It helps them to find key words from Ting. Great. It encourages students to dig deeper into the text rather than just answering comprehension questions from Anna. Great comment. Thank you. It helps them to read and reread, and it helps them to build vocabulary from Asha. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Samita says it would make them think of or contemplate over what fits best according to the asked questions. It helps promote vocabulary from Sumaima. It promotes creativity, imagination, and expression from Aisha. Usma says it's a great scaffolding activity and encouragement to move step by step in written skills. Wonderful. Thank you so much. What great responses, everybody.
Excellent answers, everyone. Thank you. So now you can give it a try. We will read a short excerpt from For Life's Sake, an essay by author Linda Hogan, in which she describes her journey as a writer, particularly the profound connection between her Native American heritage and her craft. You will select a word, a phrase, or a sentence that captures the heart of the text. So let's read this passage together. I'll read it aloud and you can follow along. As we read, be thinking about a word, phrase, or sentence that you believe capture the heart of the text. Looking back, I can say that I was a poet by heart. I didn't need words at first. I was an observer. I only grew into a writing life. My work was, and still is, a way of being in the world. It is an acknowledgement that we live in a sentient world. With my work, I try to see the world whole again. I also know the importance of the tiniest root of a plant, that it contributes to our world. My writing is larger than I am. It comes from some other place I can't name. I am grateful for it. In it, there are the undercurrents of earth, waves of ocean, discoveries unknown to me. But most importantly, I've had to learn how to wait, listen, and follow. I've had to learn, as now, sitting under a tree, for the work to reveal itself, to come to me. So now, take a moment to think about the passage, select a word, phrase, or sentence, and write it in the chat.
Yeah, what is a word, phrase, or sentence that really stands out for you about this passage? This is a beautiful passage. And Stephanie, you read it so beautifully. Let's see, we see some people who are saying grateful is a word that sticks out for them. Nostalgic, great. Fruitful. We live in a sentient world, touches my heart. That's a great sentence or phrase. Yeah, absolutely. Martha says sitting under a tree. Suzanne, observer, live in a sentient world. I have to learn how to wait, listen, and follow. That's her word, phrase, and sentence. Great. Zarkish says the sentence that stood out to her was, I only grew into a writing life. Wonderful. And a lot of people also are saying that sentient world phrase. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for those great answers. So now let's take a look at some classroom guidelines for word, phrase, sentence. First, it's important to give students time to read a selected text in advance, unless it's short enough to be read during class. Next, as students select a word, phrase, or sentence, It's important to ensure that the selections are meaningful. Remind students that when they share their responses, they will need to explain their selections. Students then share their responses and ask questions in small groups. And as a possible follow-up activity, you may ask students to record a journal entry or create a poster to display in the classroom. Here are a couple of additional tips for using word, phrase, sentence. For an online option, you might consider Jamboard or another similar tool for students to display their selections. Jamboard is a virtual whiteboard that can be used for online collaboration between teacher and students in real time. Secondly, encourage students to annotate the text, an important technique for encouraging active reading. Students can use highlighting, underlining, and writing notes in the margins as they read. Finally, let's take a look at this last tip. The order can be reversed and implemented as sentence, word, or phrase, depending on your own preference. So now let's take some time to pull this all together. We've looked at various visible thinking routines, beginning, middle, end, the 4 C's, think, puzzle, explore, the 3 Y's, and word, phrase, sentence. Please consider the examples that we've explored. Which one might you use with your students and why? Take a few moments and share your ideas in the chat.
Yes, thanks everyone. Which routine from today might you use and why? Let's see. Graciela says the 3 Y's. Gunel says all of them are productive. Bierman says also the 3 Y's. Let's see, the 4 C's from Zarmeen. I will use them all as I find them interesting from Kubra. Think, puzzle, explore. All of them stimulate critical thinking, so I would use all of them from Anna. Wonderful. Especially I would use the last one, word, phrase, sentence from Kubra. And we will start with the beginning, middle, end, and tomorrow in my class about stereotyping. How interesting. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. I know we all got a lot of great tools today that we're going to be able to use in our classrooms. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining me today. And I hope that our look at visible thinking routines will lead to new ideas for your own classrooms. I'd just like to share one last thought, and that's a quote from Ron Richart, a lead researcher at Project Zero. He says, take risks in your teaching. Most of all, have confidence in every learner's ability to think and your capacity to nurture that thinking. The results will amaze and energize you. I love this quote because it highlights one of the beauties of education. As teachers, we work to develop dynamic and engaging learning opportunities for our students, while we ourselves are constantly learning and gaining new insights. And so I hope that today's look at visible thinking will lead you and your students to amazing new classroom adventures.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was such a wonderful and inspiring session. A great start to my day, maybe a great end to some of our other viewers here who are in different time zones. We really appreciate your sharing these engaging and flexible routines that can help students not only process information and make connections, but also build their critical thinking and collaboration skills. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you. My pleasure.